Hey, how's it going, everyone? I wanted to make a follow-up discussion, follow-up video on the conversation we had about 3 weeks ago when I released this video where I talked about how you can ace the AWS interview and what are some of the best practices around the preparation, some of the helpful tips to prepare for your interview with Amazon. One of you folks posted a question on that video as a comment asking about, hey, this is great, but what about the internal transfers at Amazon? It sounds like you had maybe some experience with that. Would you mind letting us know how that went for you? And yes, I'd be happy to. I did switch roles at Amazon, so I figured, hey, let's talk about my experience and my observations of some of my colleagues changing roles within AWS as well. Now, to the extent of what I'll tell you today, that those are the observations of my own use case and some of my colleagues that I've observed, and that is all within AWS. So I, from personal or secondhand experience, would not be able to tell you what it's like to switch roles within some of the other organizations within Amazon, but within AWS, I can tell you with a great level of confidence, both based on the first-hand examples as well as the second-hand examples that I've seen. Now, with that, let's dive in and let's talk about the expectations and mechanics around changing roles within Amazon. So maybe let's first talk about when can you change a role. And the best practice in general is that you want to stay in the role that you've been hired into for at least a year. This is just general best practice for any company as well, because you want to be learning and performing in the role that you've been hired into for some time and capture some data points around how well you work, what are some of your superpowers, what are some of your growth areas, because that becomes important later on when you start looking for role transitions to be able to back what you've done within the company so far and sell yourself, if you will, to the next manager and their team, so they can see what are your superpowers and the growth areas as observed by your existing teams. Now, let's say you've worked at least a year in your role, and now you're thinking about potentially changing the role that you're in. A good reason to change a role is that maybe you've mastered a lot of the skills and picked up a lot of the knowledge within that role. So you could just use a fresh start. You could just use a change in the what you work on, how you work on things, and so on. Another good reason for a change could be to maybe pursue one of your passions that you've had for a long time that maybe to some smaller extent you're able to work on, maybe on a side with your current role, but maybe there's some other role that entirely focuses on that. It could be a good next step for you. That was my experience, and when I got hired into AWS, I got hired as a ProServe specialist, focusing on the data lakes and being hired as a data architect. Now, shortly after I joined AWS, I got fast tracked through the onboarding process and got placed on a project. Now, as the luck will have it, I got placed on a project that was machine learning project. There was a shortage of machine learning engineers, and I really liked what I saw. I was paired up with the data scientist who was working there as in a half-time capacity, just to kind of help me get onboarded with machine learning and help me pick up those skills. And then from there on, I ran the project mostly myself there. Now, that really left an impression on me because I really found the machine learning really exciting, really fun, very, very interesting and fascinating. And I decided to pursue that path. Now, at that point, by the time I finished that project, I've only been within AWS for about 5 months, not even close to the best practice of staying 1 year that I told you about. But I felt really strongly about pursuing the machine learning and stepping away from the data architecture and data lakes and focusing my full capacity into machine learning there. And had conversation with my manager then at the time, and we had that conversation how it'd be good to spend a little bit more time in this role. But I laid out some really, really good points around how we have the shortage of resources currently and as ML engineers, how there's a lot of customers asking for help with this. And that helped me change my role without again changing teams, just change my role to be focused on performing as an ML engineer within ProServe. And that's perhaps one of the first lessons where if you want to make a job change and you want to make a transition, don't just talk about why this is good for you. Find ways to explain the change that you're requesting from the perspective of the benefits that the organization will have from that. So in my case, sure, I was very excited and fascinated about machine learning, but I talked to my manager from the perspective of, hey, this could really help our team since we don't have any ML engineers in our team, and a lot of customers are asking for this. Look at this project that I've completed. The customer that I work with there provided really good references for me, and the collection of those things that were not necessarily about me and what I want, but rather around how I can provide value to others led to the approval for me to refocus and perform as an ML engineer. And I've been really happy working within ProServe as an ML engineer for about 2 years. But then came time to potentially make a change again. Now, at this point in time, I've been with ProServe for more than 2 years. And I started thinking to myself, hey, I was always really passionate, really excited around helping others pick up skills. I was always really, really happy to help others upskill and improve their quality of life through getting better opportunities. I was really always interested in creating some of the material that helps others learn how to do particular things instead of relying on me to do those things for them, which was oftentimes the case in ProServe, where I was a specialist and it was on me to build things, it was on me to design things, rather than enabling others to be able to operate without me. So with that, I was able to, within ProServe, run some boot camps. I ran a boot camp on SageMaker Ground Truth and some of the other ML capabilities, but those are always things that I did on the side that maybe happened once every a few months as there was some internal training scheduled. And I decided to instead pursue the education and helping others upskill as a full-time gig and get paid for it. So I decided to look into the roles within training and certification within AWS. And I found the role of senior technical instructor that really appealed to me. I had conversations with a few folks from that organization, and I've seen that everyone is an exceptional, really, really nice to work with, really healthy, good environment, which is always something you want to assess anytime you're looking to interview with companies. It's not just important what you will be doing there, but also how supportive the team around you is going to be. That's a really big factor in every success, in every role that you should search for and your own success. So that's something that I always look for when I'm looking to switch roles, switch teams, switch companies. It's always really important to also for me in a way to interview the other side and try to learn a little bit more. So I've really liked the culture and mentality that I've seen within training certification. I like the type of the work. I found it very meaningful, and I've decided to pursue that change. And again, I had a conversation with my manager at the time, and I said, "Listen, this has been an amazing, great learning experience. I love working with all the customers, but I just feel like I need to pursue this really, really long passion of mine that got rekindled as I was doing these internal trainings, conducting these internal trainings for our ProServe folks. And the manager was really supportive. It really, really helped me prepare and move on to that next role, transition my responsibilities to the other team members. And that is the reaction that I've observed both in my own experiences as well as in experiences of other colleagues I've had that's changed roles. There was a colleague that worked in the Alexa division that got changed to our ProServe team. Had very pleasant, very smooth experience of making the transitions. Another colleague who moved from change certification to solution architecture. Another colleague that moved from training certification to ProServe, the opposite of what I've done, and so on and so forth. And of course, some folks transitioning from ProServe to be product managers and in the other part of the AWS organization. From every single person, and again, in my experience, the culture around switching and transitioning within the organization was very, very supportive. And if you think about it, that makes sense. It's actually very, very smart on the organizational level, because what is going to happen if you are resisting and preventing folks from transitioning to roles that they feel very passionate about? Those great, smart, very capable people are just going to leave your organization. So it seems what Amazon has done was realize very, very early on that that is what's the most likely outcome if you do not support people in transitioning between roles. And the company is incredibly supportive of it. The outcome, we get to stay within AWS, and we get to provide value in the other parts of organization there. To give you just a brief recap of what that internal transfer between different organizations for AWS within AWS looked like for me, it involved a smaller, reduced version of the typical interviews that you have. I still had the loop, but it was a smaller version. It didn't have 5 or 6 interviews like it did the first time I was getting hired, but it still had interviews. It still had the managers that I'm going to be working for as part of the new role talk to my current manager and interview me to make sure that I would be the good fit for them, as well as to make sure that they're the good fit for me. There's always that mutual alignment that needs to happen there. So listen, if you're getting hired into, have an opportunity to get hired into AWS as part of a particular role that you think you'll enjoy, but maybe you don't see yourself potentially being in that role forever, then that's okay. Just know that in the future, you're likely going to be able to find a new role for yourself within AWS or Amazon, and be able to make that transition to the next role, which is only natural way to operate. You don't actually want to be staying in the same role from the professional development perspective for 15 years, because likely you are learning less and less as the years go by. Now, after a few years, you potentially want to make some changes either to your existing role, so responsibilities change. So maybe you stay in the same role, but your responsibilities evolve, or you decide to change roles there. Both are possible. I've gone through both, because my first role change was really the same team, the same manager, but very different responsibilities. And then my second role change actually changed teams, changed the entire AWS organization. And again, both changes, both transitions were pretty smooth there. Again, if you missed the first video, make sure to check it out. It has various tips and advice for interviewing and pursuing different roles with AWS. And I hope that this was helpful to you. Again, just quick check-in with responding to one of the questions or comments on the first video. If you have anything else you're kind of curious about, or you're interested in, you'd like me to maybe create a video on to walk you through maybe different services, then don't hesitate to let me know, and that's likely I'll try to respond to your comments with a link to your discussion as well. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope that you have an amazing rest of the weekend, and I'll catch you next time.